There's a real delight in being able to be a present parent. And it's a luxury sometimes because we all have to work. We all have a lot of stuff to do, but when you can take a minute to just...
Saturday morning.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, I work so hard.
She talks like she's a one-woman band. That is not hard work. Hard work is get up in the morning, get to 7 o'clock, get into a factory or a shop and working for 10 hours on your feet, coming home knackered. That's not what happens to her.
And still being a mom.
That is
still
not
being
what
a
happens to
mom.
her.
King Charles just made the most explosive move of his reign, and maybe the most brutal royal punishment in modern history. The Royal Exile Clause, a little-known constitutional mechanism, has reportedly been activated, and it's aimed squarely at Meghan and Harry. Sources inside Buckingham Palace are claiming that this clause, usually reserved for the gravest betrayals, has now been used to formally banish the Duke and Duchess of Sussex from the UK in any royal or official capacity. And why now? Why this sudden and absolute break? Because allegedly, an internal audit uncovered shocking financial misuse tied to Archewell's grant fund.
As ever, her new company, the very first thing she said was, look, you know, when I had the TIG, which was her previous lifestyle website, you know, I loved cooking and I loved gardening and being a hostess, and that she basically said I had to keep my light under a bushel at this time because of the royal family. Then we get her show, her Netflix show.
We're talking serious allegations of misappropriated money, and for a monarchy trying to rebuild its moral standing, this crossed the line. This isn't a title being revoked. This is total erasure. And honestly, I think it's long overdue. But the story doesn't stop with the exile, because what was uncovered behind palace doors could change everything. It's not a bluff. It's not a PR tactic. King Charles has allegedly pulled out one of the rarest and most powerful tools in the royal arsenal, the Royal Exile Clause. And according to palace insiders, this clause hasn't been activated in living memory. In fact, many constitutional scholars believed it had quietly faded into irrelevance. Until now, the clause reportedly allows the reigning monarch to declare any member of the royal family persona non grata, unwelcome, unrecognized, and completely cut off. Not just from official duties, not just from ceremonial events, but from the very machinery of the monarchy itself. It's exile in the truest, most brutal sense. And this isn't just palace gossip. Multiple high-level aides have allegedly confirmed that Meghan and Harry are no longer permitted to return to the UK in any official royal capacity.
Her creativity being stunted. She says that when, you know, she first, and, you know, as a result of the royal family, she says that when she became a mum, she would have thought that she'd be able to have a baby on her hip and give speeches, but then, you know, the whole drama and the pain and everything that was caused by being part of the royal family.
Press show her wearing pretty much every colour in the rainbow. The show opens with the claim that the royal family declined to comment on the series. That's another lie. The palace says it received one email from an unknown company and attempts to verify it with
Not for state visits, not for charity appearances under the royal banner, not even for events like Trooping the Colour or royal funerals unless specifically and privately invited, which sources say is unlikely to happen again. More than that, they've reportedly been stripped of every residual privilege they once clung to. Diplomatic protections for overseas travel? Revoked. Security detail during UK stays? Gone. Access to government-funded properties and travel allowances? Cancelled. Even their names, yes, their actual names, are allegedly being scrubbed from future royal event planning documents. It's a full-scale purge. And here's the most shocking part. King Charles didn't blink. He didn't delay. The moment the trigger was justified, he pulled it. This wasn't a dragged-out debate. It was a command. The monarchy had been embarrassed for the last time. But what could have possibly pushed him this far? What could justify using a clause with consequences this final, this permanent? The answer lies in a financial scandal that insiders say rocked the palace to its core. It all came crashing down with numbers. Not interviews, not tell-all books, but spreadsheets, transfers, and missing funds. According to multiple leaked reports, a routine audit of Archewell's financial activity, particularly grant usage tied to public or donor contributions, uncovered serious irregularities. We're talking about money that was earmarked for charitable causes that seemingly never arrived.
this series, and they'll believe it. They'll believe the smears about Britain and our monarchy, that we're a bunch of bigoted and hateful people. They even blamed Brexit for the racism which apparently was aimed at Meghan Markle, which is just completely absurd. But by far the most sickening part of this show for me was the constant use of Harry's...
But they made a big fuss. So she said, all right, well, I noticed and others noticed that her mother didn't look happy being there. She did come, but she did look a bit fed up and cross.
As a silent wallet, he cut off communication completely. That's right, Tyler Perry, the man who gave them a roof when no one else would, has officially walked away. And from the tone of his message, he won't be coming back. One of the most jaw-dropping moments in Perry's speech came when he revealed that Meghan tried
line items that didn't match receipts. Funds that were routed through layers of holding accounts before disappearing into ambiguous administrative costs. One insider close to the financial investigation allegedly described it as a classic paper trail shuffle. Too many expenses, not enough transparency. And this wasn't an outside accusation. This wasn't a third-party charity watchdog issuing complaints. These concerns came from within, from royal advisors and government-linked financial reviewers who had the authority to dig deep. The red flags were glaring, and what began as a quiet internal query reportedly escalated into a full-blown emergency briefing for King Charles himself. Palace sources claim the king was livid. One senior aide allegedly heard him say, "This isn't just mismanagement, it's disgraceful." And another insider told reporters that the mood in the room was nuclear. The firm could tolerate drama. It could even stomach public criticism to an extent. But mishandling public or charitable funds, that was different. That struck at the heart of royal credibility.
Favourite little niece Ashley. Meghan also sees she got no advice on royal protocol, forcing her to learn how to be a princess all on her own.
Joining this family, I knew that there was a protocol for how things were done. There's no class in some person who goes sit like this.
In the time since, in the years since, they've done everything to prove the opposite. You know, they can't seem to get enough of media attention. I don't think people understand even Harry's book that's been released is part of a multi-book deal, right? You know, how many people leave their family and record themselves on the plane the entire
She spreads her legs, she hikes her dress, circles her genitals.
The one thing King Charles is trying to salvage in a modern age that increasingly questions why monarchies exist at all. That's why this wasn't handled quietly. That's why the clause was triggered. This wasn't a slap on the wrist. It was a signal. The crown doesn't tolerate betrayal, especially not when it's done under the guise of philanthropy. And as word of the financial irregularities spread inside palace walls, a deeper fracture started to open. In the hours and days after the audit findings were revealed, Buckingham Palace reportedly descended into internal chaos. Aides who had once defended Meghan and Harry, who vouched for their intentions and advocated for a path to reconciliation, were blindsided. Some, according to sources, even wept. Not just out of loyalty, but because they knew what was coming next, the full wrath of a betrayed monarch. But not everyone was shocked. There was, apparently, another group, quiet, calculated, and patient. Aides, advisors, and senior courtiers who had been warning of this exact scenario for months, if not years. These were the ones who allegedly kept track of every inconsistency, every red flag, every breach of protocol. And now they were done waiting. This wasn't just a rupture between King Charles and the Sussexes. It was a battlefield inside the palace itself. Lines were drawn. Meetings turned cold. Trust was shattered. What's worse, this divide wasn't just about the money. It was about what that money symbolized. The betrayal wasn't just financial. It was philosophical. Meghan and Harry, once seen as the monarchy's modern face, had now become its greatest liability. And while some in the palace begged for leniency, others pushed for action. They argued that continued silence would only further erode the crown's credibility, that the institution had already given the Sussexes too many chances, that the only way forward was a clean break. So when King Charles finally made the call to trigger the exile clause, he didn't just answer to his own sense of duty. He answered to a growing tide inside the firm, one that had reached its breaking point. And now that the royal doors have slammed shut, the world is watching what happens next. This isn't the fairy tale version of royal exile you've seen in tabloids. This isn't a subtle fade into private life or a behind-the-scenes agreement to stay quiet. This is absolute banishment, a full and formal rejection by the very institution that gave Meghan and Harry their global platform in the first place. Palace insiders are now saying that Meghan and Harry are completely cut off, not just from royal duties, but from the entire ecosystem of monarchy. That means no invitations to official events, no appearances on the royal balcony, no last-minute reconciliation talks behind closed doors. They are out, fully, permanently. Here's what that actually looks like. They reportedly lose access to all royal funding and subsidies, even for travel and security, the right to represent the monarchy at charitable functions, any possibility of returning as part-time royals, a deal they once hoped to broker. And it goes deeper than that. Sources say King Charles has already instructed the royal household to begin the process of removing their names from official calendars and programs. Every appearance, every title mention, every shadow of Sussex representation wiped. Even internally, staffers are allegedly being told to treat the couple as if they no longer exist within the family's operational scope. That's not exile. That's erasure. This is the moment the crown stops tolerating half-in, half-out arrangements. This is the moment Charles finally drew a line. And I'll say it flat out. It's about time. For years, the monarchy bent over backward trying to accommodate their demands. But when you undermine the institution while benefiting from its image, you can't expect a lifetime pass. This is the overdue consequence. And yet, the public's response would prove just as divided as the palace's. The moment the news broke, it exploded. British tabloids splashed "exiled" across front pages. Online outlets churned out takes by the hour. Social media, total war zone. Supporters of the monarchy called it a historic correction. They praised Charles for finally acting like a king, not a grieving father. TikTok was flooded with clips titled things like, "The Sussex saga ends," and "Charles just ended them." Meanwhile, British YouTube creators, who've tracked every twist in the Meghan and Harry drama, put out immediate reaction videos. And many didn't hold back. One even called it a royal execution, 2025 style. But not everyone agreed. Some voices, especially in US media, accused the monarchy of being too harsh. Why now, they asked. Why not years ago when the Oprah interview aired? Why not after the book drops, the Netflix show, the Spotify exit? They painted Charles as cold, calculated, petty even. But here's what I think they're missing. This wasn't about revenge. It was about damage control. Because if the monarchy didn't act now, it risked becoming a punchline. Again. And you know it's serious when even typically neutral commentators are picking a side. From breakfast TV in the UK to late-night hosts in the US, everyone had an opinion. And suddenly, the Sussexes, who've spent years cultivating a narrative of victimhood, looked a lot less sympathetic. Because when the headlines stop calling you Duke and Duchess and start calling you ex-royals under financial scrutiny, the public mood shifts fast. And behind the scenes, Hollywood was already reacting. In Hollywood, the fallout didn't wait for official statements. It started immediately. According to sources close to several studios, at least 2 pending projects involving Meghan have been paused. Not cancelled yet, but paused. That's code for, we're not risking it until this blows over. One streaming executive allegedly said it bluntly, "We don't do business with liability." And that's exactly what Meghan and Harry have become, a reputational risk. It's not just about public opinion. In the entertainment world, perception is everything. If you're trending for the wrong reasons, no one wants to take the hit, especially not in an industry that already sees the couple as unpredictable and polarizing. But it's not just Hollywood pulling back. The money behind the image is starting to dry up. Donors who once funneled millions into Archewell, their foundation, their media hub, their platform, are allegedly backing out. Some have paused donations. Others have quietly requested audits of their own. According to insiders, at least one major contributor has completely severed ties, citing reputational concerns. And several mid-level donors are demanding public clarification before they release another cent. The brand that Meghan and Harry built was always shaky, built on press, popularity, and royal ties. But now, the press is brutal. The popularity is slipping, and the royal ties officially severed. So the question becomes, what do they have left? And the answer might be even more troubling than anyone expected. There are whispers, quiet, but growing, that legal teams are already positioning themselves. From both sides, the monarchy allegedly has documents and financial records tied to Archewell's grant use. If even half of what's rumored is true, we're looking at a potential wave of legal headaches, not just in the UK, but internationally. And Meghan and Harry? They've retained legal counsel before, but this is different. This is a monarchy in defense mode, and the gloves are off. The next move may not be an interview or a Netflix special. It could be litigation. Here's the truth. Whether you believe this is deserved or think it's extreme, the message is unmistakable. The Crown is done playing nice. The so-called Exile Clause is a historic move, and paired with financial misconduct allegations, it signals the royal family has closed the chapter permanently. Meghan and Harry wanted out. Now they're all the way out. No titles, no trust, no way back. And in the world of royalty, when you're banished, you don't get a sequel. So now we ask, is this the final curtain for Meghan and Harry's royal legacy? Because if King Charles really has activated the Exile Clause, and if the grant fraud rumors hold any weight, then this isn't scandal anymore. It's historic. The Sussex chapter with the UK is not just closed, it's burned. And from the ashes, only one institution still stands: the Crown.